All right, we can have Mr. Rivera. So, right. Good morning, Mr. Rivera.
Good morning.
And I'm ready for the interpreter.
Thank you.
Ok, buenos días, señor Rivera.
All right, I'm Judge Pilmer.
Yo soy el juez Pilmer.
Right. You're here, you're charged with several offenses, the first of which is aggravated driving under the influence.
Ok, a usted se le imputa varios cargos. El primer cargo es haber estado conduciendo un vehículo bajo alguna influencia.
And this is what's called a class 4 felony.
Y esto se considera un delito mayor tipo 4.
You are also charged with the unlawful possession of a controlled substance.
También se le está imputando la tenencia ilegal de un estupefaciente.
This is also a class 4 felony.
Eso también se considera un delito mayor tipo 4.
Right. I've had an opportunity to review the sworn synopsis, and I would make a finding of probable cause.
He tenido la oportunidad de revisar en resumidas cuentas lo ocurrido y para poder sentenciar.
Additionally, Mr. Rivera, there is a warrant that was issued by the state of New York asking for your return to the state of New York.
Y tiene también, señor Romero, una orden de arresto en el estado de Nueva York para que lo devuelvan a Nueva York.
Okay. You will get a copy of all the charges as well as the a warrant from the state of New York.
Le van a proveer una copia de todos los cargos que tiene en su contra y también la orden de arresto del estado de New York.
So on the charges here in Illinois as class 4 felonies, is the DUI, is that a 10 days, 480 hours?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so if you're convicted of the offenses in Illinois, you may be sentenced to a term of probation.
Ok. Y si se le sentencia por los cargos que tiene acá en Illinois, tendría una libertad condicional.
Or you may be sentenced to a term in the Illinois Department of Corrections from 1 to 3 years or 3 to 6 years if you're extended term eligible.
Y la otra posibilidad es que se esté encarcelado en el Departamento de Correcciones del Estado de Illinois por de 1 a 3 años o podría ser de 3 a 6 dependiendo si esté calificado.
There would be up to a 6-month term of mandatory supervised release following any discharge from the Department of Corrections.
Y si lo sueltarían de su encarcelamiento, tendría un término de 6 meses mandatorio de estar en probation.
And there may be a fine of up to $25,000 on each offense.
Y podría también recibir una multa de hasta $25,000 por cada cargo.
With respect to the warrant from the state of New York, you have a right to be advised of that New York is asking for your return.
Ok, y acerca de su orden de arresto del Estado de Nueva York, tiene usted el derecho de ser avisado de que lo están buscando, que quieren que le...
You have a right to know what crime you have been charged with in the state of New York.
También tiene el derecho de saber cuál es el crimen de que se le acusa en el estado de Nueva York.
You have a right to be represented by an attorney in this matter.
Y también tiene el derecho de un abogado acerca de lo mismo.
And you have a right to have a hearing before a judge to determine whether or not you may be returned to the state of New York.
Y también tiene el derecho de tener una audiencia para hablar sobre el tema si lo van a devolver al estado de Nueva York.
So on the new charges in Illinois, you are presumed to be innocent of these charges. Go ahead.
Y en los nuevos cargos acá en el estado de Illinois, siempre se presume al principio de que usted es inocente de los cargos.
You have a right to plead not guilty.
Tiene el derecho de declararse no culpable.
You have a right to be present on all of your court dates.
Tiene el derecho de tener presencia en cada una de las plazas legales.
You have a right to confront and cross-examine witnesses against you.
Tiene el derecho de confrontar y interrogar a los testigos en su contra.
You have a right to have witnesses testify on your behalf and use the subpoena power of the court to compel their appearance.
Okay. Y también tiene el derecho de presentar sus propios testigos y también usar el poder de comparecencia que tiene la corte para que puedan atestiguar.
If you fail to appear in court at any future court date, you will be deemed to have waived your right to be present and to confront witnesses against you.
Si usted no comparece a alguna de las fechas de plazas legales, pierde su derecho de presencia en la corte y también tiene el derecho de interrogar a testigos.
Furthermore, any trial or hearing set for that date may take place in your absence.
Y también, además, en su ausencia podría darse a cabo el juicio.
You have a right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of these court proceedings, including at today's proceedings.
Y tiene usted derecho de cada etapa de los procedimientos ser representado por un abogado, incluyendo los procedimientos del día de hoy.
If you are unable to afford an attorney, one will be appointed to represent you at no cost to you.
Si usted no puede financiar su propio abogado, un abogado de oficio se le ha asignado sin ningún costo alguno para usted.
If you are not a U.S. citizen, you have the right to have notice of your arrest and detention given to your country's consular representatives.
Si usted no es ciudadano de Estados Unidos, tiene el derecho de que se le informe al cónsul de su país y sus representantes.
You also have a right to communicate with those consular representatives.
También tiene derecho de comunicarse con esos representantes del cónsul de su país.
So do you understand these rights?
¿Entiende los derechos indicados?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I've reviewed the request for appointment of public defender, as well as the other documents presented. I will appoint the public defender's office to represent Mr. Rivera, not only on the criminal charges here, but also with respect to the extradition request.
Okay. He revisado la petición del señor Rivera para un abogado de oficio. Se lo voy a otorgar para que pueda revisar los cargos que tiene acá y también sobre su extradición a Nueva York.
Mr. Phelps, what conditions is the state seeking?
Y señor Phelps, ¿qué condiciones pide la fiscalía?
Judge, the state does have an agreement with counsel that he would be released on this case alone, the Illinois case, with standard conditions of pretrial release.
Ok, señoría, el Estado ha pedido el abogado de oficio que se le dé la libertad sobre las condiciones de los cargos en el Estado de Illinois.
And with respect to the extradition request, what would be done with that?
Y respecto sobre la petición de extradición, ¿qué se haría con eso?
Your Honor, the defendant has agreed to hold that over till Monday. I have included language in the CF matter from Illinois that he is released only on that case, that he will be held on the New York warrant until Monday. I do have charging documents, Judge, they're just not notarized for the extradition, so we will have those on file by Monday.
All right.
Ok, entonces, señoría, esos cargos se los vamos a esperar para el día lunes y acá tengo toda la información sobre esos cargos para el día lunes.
Your Honor, I have reviewed the conditions with Mr. Rivera with the assistance of somebody who speaks Spanish. He is in agreement with those, and he has requested that the hearing take place on Monday.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Rivera, I'm going to impose the following conditions for your release on the Illinois charges only. Go ahead.
Ok, señor Rivera, voy a imponer las siguientes condiciones para su libertad solamente sobre los cargos de Illinois nada más.
Okay. One, you are to appear in court on the date set until your case has been concluded.
Ok, número uno, comparecer a la corte la fecha de la plaza legal que se haya dado hasta que concluya todo su caso.
Second, that you'll submit to the orders and process of the court and follow those orders.
Y segundo, que usted cumpla con los procesos y las órdenes que indica la corte.
You are not to violate any criminal statute of any jurisdiction.
Y también no puede estar en violación de ninguna ley de ninguna jurisdicción.
If you move or change your address, you do need to file a written notice with the clerk of the court within 24 hours of moving.
Y si usted se cambia de dirección, tiene que avisar desde 24 horas de la mudanza acá con la Secretaría de la Tribunal.
Additionally, you are to sign up for e-notify through the clerk of the court.
Adicionalmente, debe de inscribirse o registrarse con notificaciones electrónicas con la secretaria de la Corte.
And Mr. Phelps, the state is not seeking pretrial supervision.
El señor Phelps de la Fiscalía no está pidiendo una libertad condicional antes del juicio.
That is correct, Judge, partly based on him having to go to New York, possibly.
Okay. So I'm not going to order pretrial supervision due in part to the New York extradition matter.
Entonces, no voy a ponerlo en libertad condicional antes del juicio, parte por el hecho de que tiene una orden de extradición a Nueva York.
Okay. And so, Mr. Rivera, I'm going to enter the orders, and you will get a copy of those this morning.
Ok, señor Rivera, entonces voy a pedir eso y le voy a dar una copia de lo mismo esta mañana.
And your cases are all continued to Monday morning at 9:00 a.m. in courtroom 115.
Ok, y se va a continuar su plaza legal hasta el lunes en la mañana en la corte, a las 9 de la mañana, a la corte 115.
Right. Do you understand all of those things?
¿Entendió todo lo que se le ha dicho?
Sí.
Okay. And Mr.
Yes.
Rivera indicated C, which the court understands to be yes. All right, so that will conclude these proceedings this morning. Thank you.
Ok, entonces entendí su respuesta que sí y se levanta la sesión de esta mañana. Gracias.
And that will conclude my need for you this morning, sir. So thank you very much for your services.
Okay, thanks for using our service. Call back when needed. Have a good day, Your Honor.
All right, you as well.
All right.
Judge, there was one that wanted a live stream. I didn't know if we were live streaming yet.
We are.
Oh, all right, perfect. See, problem solved.
So who's next?
Next, Your Honor, Francisco Valerio.
All right.
Good morning, Your Honor.
All right. Good morning. So this is People versus Francisco Valerio. Mr. Valerio, you were picked up on a failure to appear warrant in 23 DT 189. I see that previously the Public Defender's Office had been appointed to represent you, so I'll reappoint them.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is there anything beyond the standard conditions that the state is seeking?
No, Your Honor, this is technically the first time he'll be placed on official pretrial services by the court. Obviously, he had been released before. Based on that, Judge, if he does fail to appear again, we would be seeking sanctions. But at this time, we would just be asking for the standard conditions. I believe that's by agreement.
It is, Your Honor.
And we'd be asking for June 26th as the next court date in this courtroom in 114.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so I'll impose those mandatory conditions. So you are to appear in court to answer the charges against you on the dates that are set until your case has been concluded. You'll obey the orders and process of the court. You'll not violate any criminal statutes of any jurisdiction. You'll file written change of address notice with the clerk within 24 hours of moving, and you'll sign up for e-notify through the clerk of the circuit court. Your next court date will be June 26 at 8:30 a.m. in courtroom 114 here in Kendall County. And you'll get copies of these orders. So do you understand all of those things?
I understand everything. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, stay in touch with your attorney. Make sure you show up in court on the next court date, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And who would you like next?
This is for Mr. Swain, Your Honor.
Okay.
He's the YouTube guy.
Yeah, correct.
All right, good morning, Mr. Swain. I'm Judge Pilmer. You're here, this was on an arrest warrant previously approved by a judge in which you were charged with the lawful possession of cannabis with intent to deliver, which is a Class 3 felony, and also unlawful possession of cannabis, which is a Class 4 felony. On the Class 3 felony, if you're convicted of that, you may be sentenced to a term of probation, or you could be sentenced to a term in the Department of Corrections, so from 2 to 5 years or 5 to 10 if you're extended term eligible. There would be a 6-month term of mandatory supervised release following discharge from the Department of Corrections, and there may be a fine of up to $50,000. On the Class 4 felony, if you're convicted of that, again, you may be sentenced to a term of probation, but you could be sentenced to a term in the Department of Corrections of from 1 to 3 years or 3 to 6 if you're extended term eligible. Again, there would be a 6-month term of mandatory supervised release following discharge from the Department of Corrections, and there may be a fine of up to $25,000. So do you understand the nature of these charges against you as well as the possible penalties? So you're presumed to be innocent of these charges. You have a right to plead not guilty. You have a right to be present on all of your court dates. You have a right to confront and cross-examine witnesses against you, and you have a right to have witnesses testify on your behalf and use the subpoena power of the court to compel their appearance in court. If you fail to appear in court on any future scheduled court date, you'll be deemed to have given up your right to be present, and to confront any witnesses against you. And furthermore, any trial or hearing set for that date may take place in your absence. You do have a right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of the proceedings. If you're unable to afford an attorney, one will be appointed to represent you at no cost to you. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you have a right to have notice of your arrest and detention given to your country's consular representatives, and a right to communicate with those consular representatives. So do you understand all of those rights? I did have a question about the request for appointment of public defender. As I understand it, it shows a monthly income of $4,800. Would that be correct? All right, I'll appoint the public defender for today's purposes only. But based on that, based on the information in your request for appointment of public defender, I would not appoint them to represent you throughout these proceedings. But if you're unable to hire an attorney, you can ask the judge assigned to the case to reconsider the appointment of a public defender. All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. But I will appoint the public defender for today's purposes. What conditions is the state seeking?
Your Honor, this time I believe we have an agreement to release the defendant with all standard conditions, but we'd also be asking for pretrial release conditions through court services with all those standard conditions as well. That was based on the recommendation. As long as there's no objection to that, Judge, the paperwork has been filled out, and we would be requesting July 2nd at 9 a.m. and 1:15 for setting the preliminary hearing.
Your Honor, spoke with Mr. Swain regarding the standard conditions previously. He had no objection to those. I've spoken with him now regarding the issue of pretrial services. He's indicated to me that he has no objection to that as well.
All right. So, Mr. Swain, I will impose those standard conditions that you'll appear in court on the date set to until your case has been concluded. You'll obey the orders and process of the court, not violate any criminal statute of any jurisdiction. If you move, you'll file a written change of address with the clerk of the circuit court within 24 hours of moving. You'll sign up for e-notify through the clerk of the circuit court's office. You're also going to be placed on pretrial supervision, and next week on Monday, you'll contact court services and make arrangements as indicated in that order to provide them with the necessary information so that they can make sure that you do appear in court on the dates that are scheduled. And I will continue this matter to July 2nd at 9:00 a.m. It'll be in courtroom 115 for the purpose of setting a preliminary hearing. And you'll get copies of all these orders this morning. Do you understand those things?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, stay in touch with your attorney and good luck to you well, if you're unable to hire your own attorney, let the judge know and then you can proceed from there. Okay? But,
Mr. Rayford is last.
They're asking the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm just following recommendation.
I got you. Well, it's when we have these last minute.
Yeah, I didn't
It
have.
is what it is. If I could just have a quick second.
Pardon?
If I could have a quick second.
Sure. All right, good morning, Mr. Rayford. I'm Judge Pilmer. You're picked up on and charged with just one count, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
One count of unlawful possession of a controlled substance, and this is a Class 4 felony. If you're convicted of this offense, well, actually, let me back up a moment. I have had an opportunity to review the sworn synopsis, and I would make a finding of probable cause at this stage. If you're convicted of this offense that you're charged with, again, that's unlawful possession of a controlled substance. It is a Class 4 felony. You may be sentenced to a term of probation, or you could be sentenced to a term of 1 to 3 years in the Department of Corrections, or 3 to 6 if you're extended term eligible. There would be a 6-month term of mandatory supervised release following discharge from the Department of Corrections, and there may be a fine of up to $25,000. So do you understand the nature of the charge against you as well as the possible penalties?
The extended,
If you're extended term eligible. So that under certain circumstances, if you haven't been, for example, if you've been charged with this offense or convicted of these offenses, if you have a longer criminal history, there may be a basis for an extended term if you are convicted. And so that all that means now, and that's something you can discuss with your attorney later. And the state may not be seeking an extended term if you were to be convicted and you were to go to a sentencing hearing. So, but I just need to advise you that that's a possible sentence, okay? You are presumed to be innocent of this charge. You have a right to plead not guilty. You have a right to be present on all of your court dates. You have a right to confront and cross-examine witnesses against you. You have a right to have witnesses testify on your behalf and use the subpoena power of the court to compel their appearance in court. If you fail to appear in court on any future scheduled court date, you'll be deemed to have waived your right to be present and to confront witnesses against you. Furthermore, any trial or hearing set for that date can take place in your absence. You have a right to be represented by an attorney at all stages of these proceedings. If you're unable to afford an attorney, one will be appointed to represent you at no cost to you. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you have a right to have notice of your arrest and detention given to your country's consular representatives and a right to communicate with those consular representatives. So do you understand those rights? All right, I've reviewed the request for appointment of public defender. I am going to appoint the public defender's office. I would note that there's a pending domestic violence case. It's Mr. Gustafson, is your office appointed on that?
That I'm not aware of.
not Kendall County, it's Kane County.
Can you, let me ask, can you look at 24 DB 220?
It's not.
I don't think it's ours, no.
Okay.
That was Kane County.
Your Honor, that's Kane County. I think that's a typo on the pretrial services report.
Oh, it is a Kane County case,
It's a
okay.
Kane County case, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, that explains why I couldn't see it, but, okay. So that's all good. But I will still appoint the public defender's office on that matter. As far as conditions of release, what's the state seeking?
Your Honor, we are seeking all standard conditions. This is a non-detainable offense. We are also asking that he report to pretrial services and comply with their reporting requirements as suggested by pretrial services report. And I believe that would be by agreement at this point. Judge, we would ask to continue this case to July 2nd at 9 a.m. in courtroom 115. That would be for setting of preliminary hearing, Judge.
That is all correct, Your Honor. I have spoken with Mr. Rayford regarding the statutory conditions as well as pretrial services, and he is in agreement.
Okay, so I'll impose those conditions that you appear in court on the date scheduled to answer the charges against you until your case has been concluded. You'll obey the orders and process of the court. You'll not violate any criminal statute of any jurisdiction. If you move, you'll file a written change of address notice with the clerk of the circuit court within 24 hours of moving. You'll sign up for e-notify through the clerk of the circuit court's office. and you'll be placed on pretrial supervision, and you'll be required to register with them on Monday morning. So after you're released, you'll give them a call on Monday and call them, okay? Do you understand all of those conditions?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, and you'll get copies of these orders, and just, so your next court date is gonna be, July 2nd at 9 o'clock in courtroom 115, okay?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Have a great
Stay in touch with your attorney.
Mr. Meeker goes on vacation and all I heard conditions are.